What's the quickest way you saw a coworker get fired? I used to work as a mason. After an earthquake we had a ton of work rebuilding block walls. On a Friday we had a guy stop by the job site looking for a job. We told him be here tomorrow morning at 8 AM. We were so busy, weekends were a thing often. He shows up the next morning super hungover from celebrating the night before. He asked several times for aspirin but we didn't have any. He then wanted to go get some. We said just chill, it will be lunch soon and you can go grab some. Shortly after that he went to his truck for something and disappeared, never to be seen again. I almost got fired from a job working Rent-A-Center. Myra moved me to a new store. First 5 minutes there, with manager and RM standing over me. Lady comes in to pay her bill. Has a shitload of ones. I make the comment, "Wow, that is a giant wad of ones," and laughed. She laughed. Manager laughed. RM laughed. As the lady leaves, manager says to me, "Yeah, that was disrespectful. You are fired." RM blocked it and moved me to a new store in a much better part of town. Since it was a nicer area, we got much lower business, so I skated by till they shuttered the store. 4th degree criminal sexual misconduct. Dude was a mental health therapist who was having multiple sexual relationships with his clients. The second the first allegations came to light, HR axed him. Then word for around and more clients came forward. It was wild afterwards because the state had to do an investigation and there were failed threats made against me for telling people in our field what happened to Brad. But the allegations are founded, and he was arrested the day the state pulled his license. All this is in the public record. BTW. Worked delivery at a pizza shop that had this regular customer who was a socially meek, hippie guy living on a fixed income. Nice guy but he never tipped, at all. He ordered once a week, same order, but he lived very close to the store though, so delivering to him was just a minor annoyance. All us drivers accepted. One new driver was hired and only lasted 2 weeks cause he wrote on the inside of the box before he delivered him. Customer called up irate, he got fired on the spot. Showed up to work 2 hours late laughing about how she'd overslept as she'd been partying the night before. Tried to just start working like that was okay, and like she hadn't been consistently oversleeping for a while. Same coworker also ruined her company computer by spilling iced coffee all over it. I think it was just over a month into employment before she was let go. She told everyone she left as it wasn't the right environment for her mental health. Hasn't worked since. The guy who drunkenly fell out of his chair in a department meeting at 10 AM was the second quickest I ever saw get fired. First place goes to the guy who worked in IT security for our market room that traded billions of dollars of securities, and who had a penchant for posting on the hacking messaging boards during company time. Too bad, because he was really nice and good at his job. Just not a great hobby to be pursuing in business hours on company hardware. Guy at my job went on vacation the Friday before Thanksgiving and the whole week of Thanksgiving, only he wasn't approved. The boss literally told him, "If you don't come in tomorrow, you'll be fired because your vacation was never approved." Guy didn't show up Friday. He walked into the office today like nothing happened and was told to hand over his keys and company phone and to get off the property immediately. He didn't understand why he was fired. A coworker that handled the finances purchasing had been there a couple years was apparently accruing reward points from a vendor unbeknownst to the owner to redeem on a catalog of various merch. Said vendor called my boss to ask him how his new hot tub was going. Needless to say, he was gobsmacked. What a hot tub! She was there 1 minute and not the next. My office wasn't too far from hers and I didn't see her escorted out the door before noon on their first day, and it was actually a neighbor friend that I got the job for. And he made the mistake of getting drunk on his first day, and from what the guys from security told me was that he was drunk and he was fighting with everyone on his floor. This was at a beef plant and that they physically had to drag him off the property and they just left him in the parking lot and called his mom to go pick him up. Worked at bank as a teller. One of the personal bankers, 35-ish, went on a week-long vacation. Monday rolls around, she isn't back. Tuesday, no show. Wednesday she rolls in like nothing happened and was immediately escorted out. Apparently the company had a 48 hours no call no show policy. What I never understood was why she didn't just lay and call it sick or something. We had generous PTO sick leave. I worked at a bar in college and a new door guy got fired for smoking a joint while on the job. He was actually shocked that he got fired. It was both crazy and hilarious. Even my boss who fired him found it hilarious afterwards. Another time the different door guy got fired for taking bribes to let underage kids inside. My boss this time was very angry and almost beat his ass. One day Tim announced that he wasn't paid enough and was going to basically sit at his desk doing nothing until he was paid what he wanted. 20 minutes later the boss walked in and asked Tim if he could have a word with him. 5 minutes later the boss walked back in and announced that Tim no longer worked there and if there were any questions. There were no questions. I was told of a fellow working at a mine in Northern Territory house. They had the best food of everything you want to take for after dinners, smoko and lunch. On the way out of leaving the site via an airplane, you had to go through an actual little airport. This was raised on bags and they seen he was smuggling out frozen fries. He would have been on $100,000 a year. Dude kept pissing off the technicians and lab trainers. He was encouraged to explore different areas of employment. He lasted a week past onboarding. Likely they wanted to prevent all 3 of the lab technicians dealing with him from committing a felony. Finding a technician in that building is actually sometimes harder than hiring a scientist. He found a stray cat while on break. Proceeds to put said cat into a box. Places it under his desk to take home. We were working at a call center so people were questioning where the meowing was coming from. When management found him with cat, his excuse was "I didn't know I couldn't have pets here." Was gone before lunch on his first shift. I was working at Denny's. They hired a new manager, they were onboarding her for her first day. Then I never saw her again, and nobody had even mentioned her. After a couple of days, I asked what happened to her. I figured she was working a different shift or she had possibly gotten COVID. Nope, they just caught her smoking crack on camera. I was working in a spa. The guy working the front desk had about 20 minutes left in his shift. He went downstairs, smoked a blunt in his friend's car, came back up and got back behind the reception desk, blazed out of his mind. He was generally baked every single day, but this time he wasn't even functional. Fired on the spot. I worked at a bar and there was a bartender everybody liked. She made herself a drink while working, which was not allowed. Manager walks up, "What's that?" "My drink." "You're fired." Edit: another guy was fired when he was seen walking backwards out of the building with his back turned to all the security cameras. A server I worked with was adding in her credit card tips and adding a quarter to every tip to charge on the card. A couple people every now and then would notice on their bank statement, and it got to a point where management vetted her receipts one night and the tips she would enter in and send her packing ASAP. The boss sat her down to talk about her recent behavior at work. She whipped out her phone and started taking a video, saying that it was her right to record for when it goes to court. The boss said, "Okay, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, you're fired." This was at a Domino's Pizza. Not as bad as some here, but anyway. New guy, first day, working in a grocery store. I am the one showing you the job. When our boss leaves at the end of his shift, new guy comes to me and says happily and seriously, "Hey, now that the boss is gone we can stop working." He didn't last long. At my first job, the dishwasher walked out into the dinner parlor and announced to all customers that a contagious disease has been making its way through the kitchen. Owner was in the building, dragged the guy out the front door by the wrist, and apologized to customers. This was 2008. I heard this one secondhand where I work. We interviewed and hired someone remotely. At his remote team meeting on his first day of work, somebody else showed up. His interviewers noticed and confronted him. He admitted that he wasn't the person who interviewed, and was fired that day. Her boyfriend came to the job to fight the supervisor. It was hilarious. Lot of things came out that day, like the fact that she was also sleeping with the delivery guy who delivered packages to the office. Had an abortion earlier in the year for him too. I miss that messy job lol. We had a work meeting after hours and she killed time between the end of her shift and beginning of the meeting taking shots at a bar. Was wasted at the meeting. I guess she kept drinking afterwards. Came into work the next morning shouting that she was still drunk at 7 a.m. When I was in college there was a pizza guy that would sell weed when he delivered pizzas. People would ask for Freddie to deliver the pizza. This was about 89-90, so he wouldn't have had even his own pager then. I don't know what happened, but it didn't last long. My newly hired coworker was on her second week of training. Got caught by a supervisor going to town with a vibrator in her cubicle. Like, pants unzipped, muffled moans, etc. I'm 90 sure she just got hired there to check something on her fetish bucket list. A guy got hired in the first firm I ever worked for, turns up for first morning at work, and within an hour has emailed the entire company 6,000 people about his band and their availability for birthdays, weddings, etc. He was dismissed by lunchtime. They weren't fired because where I worked it's all about someone put in a time off request before they even started working after being hired. I think it's not uncommon, but people usually lay it out to the person doing the hiring. He had sex with the cleaning lady on the desk in his office. It was so funny actually because when the boss asked him about it, he tried to plead ignorance and questioned whether it was wrong or frowned upon to do that. Haha, he was such an idiot. About 20 years ago, working for an Apple reseller. 2 weeks after a new warehouse guy is hired, a bunch of inventory goes missing. New guy is acting suspicious. Fired. They get a warrant, cops show up and find all the missing gear at his house. I worked in an office a few years ago. Another employee and me got pissed we hadn't gotten the raises we were promised, so we came back from a long lunch one day drunk. Told our boss the company sucked. We got fired pretty quick. Worked at a bank, we were robbed at gunpoint. One of the tellers was quick to tweet out, "Woo, get the rest of the day off, feel free to visit me at work with a gun and ski mask anytime," fired upon walking in the next morning. Two 20-year-olds, a young man and a young woman, got into a very loud argument in a huge open area of an office building. He called her a stupid, fat cow and she hit him across the face. Both were gone within an hour or two. Security officer drove a female groundskeeper to a company airstrip and fucked her Donald Duck style on the tailgate of the security truck until an exec arrived unexpectedly. His brother and wife also work at the company. Was training this teenage guy, who on his first day came super high. On his first customers he said to the lady he was helping, "Man, these are some huge knockers you're carrying." Yeah, he was fired immediately.